Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about the future of Total War and Creative Assembly's problems with the player base. And yes, there are problems, significant issues at that as well. A couple of days ago, I did this poll asking people if they would purchase the next Total War game. It got 2.4k votes in 3 days. And in fact, the reason it only got 2.4k votes is because I did other posts, I did other polls. It would have probably gotten more had I left it alone. But this poll got 100 views in the 100 votes in the first 20 minutes. And I've done plenty of polls on this channel. I have not seen those kind of crazy numbers often, suffice to say. It's absolutely a subject that a lot of people are engaged in. But anyway, 25% of people said yes, 18% of people said no, 42% of people said yes if Warhammer 3 is improved, and 15% of people said no if they don't fix Warhammer 3. Now, the way to look at that poll is that you have the hard yes and hard no question. So you only have 25% of people being hard yeses on the subject, with everyone else either being a hard no or being a soft yes or a soft no. That's the way to view it. That's certainly the way I'm going to view those kind of results. And that is indicative of how a lot of players feel about Total War right now. People still care about Total War, and that's good from the perspective that the worst thing that can happen for a gaming developer is when people no longer are interested in the product you're trying to sell. If you think people being angry on Reddit, social media, and review bombings is terrible, wait and see what happens when people don't engage whatsoever. Sure, you might have a game with a lot of positive reviews, and then you have a game that's only played by 100 people. We've seen that happen. This year, in fact. We've seen it happen with Wildgate, for instance. We've seen it happen in the negative way. So Wildgate got positive reviews and no one played it. Then you had the negative side of things with Concord and Stormgate. So that is the kind of situation. Apathy is the worst outcome for Creative Assembly. Negativity obviously is not great, but negativity still means people are engaged. So right now, my view on the matter is the vast majority of the player base of Total War is still engaged. But a lot of people are questioning whether or not it will be worth it. And I think it depends on how Creative Assembly handles things going forward. But let's consider the totality of the Total War player base. There's roughly 1 to 2 million core fans for Total War, active at any point. These are the kind of people who will buy or look to buy any Total War game that comes out. Sure, there's tourists, there's people who will buy games besides that, word of mouth, etc. Or, oh, there's a new release, let's check it out. But the people who are going to buy Total War games and stay engaged, that's anywhere between 1 to 2 million people. That doesn't mean all of these people will buy DLCs, but those are your core fans. But if only 25% of people are certain to buy the next Total War game, then that means from 2 million people, you only have 500,000 guaranteed sales. That's not terrible, though, of course, given the fact that the next Total War game may have a budget of anywhere between 100 to 200 million people, because they've been working on, say, Warhammer, Total War, or whatever fantasy game they're working on for years, and they have hundreds of developers on it. Then yeah, you're looking at a pretty hefty budget between marketing and development costs. Like, development costs easily over 100 million, then you add voice acting, QA, you add in marketing and all that. So yeah, you do reach a $200 million budget, assuming they're doing something that they want to sell, yeah, I know, 7 million copies. Space Marine 2 sold 7 million copies, if I'm not mistaken, on the subject. So Creative Assembly is going to spend a lot on the next fantasy game, and they might spend a lot also on the next historical game, Medieval 3, Empire 2, whatever it ends up being. It doesn't matter what the game ends up being, they are still spending a lot. They have hundreds of developers working on it. We know this because we know how many people are in Creative Assembly, or roughly speaking, and we know that vast majority of those are not working on Warhammer 3, they're working on future Total War games and Alien Isolation, but really the bulk of their resources is on future Total War games. So it's a very costly affair, which means that they need millions of copies to sell in order to even break even. And Sega's not going to be just happy with them breaking even. They're going to want a good profit for, 100, 200 million, or hundreds of millions of dollars that they've spent over the years to develop those games. So if those games don't do well, CA is going to be in a lot of trouble. From Sega, they're going to have a lot of issues internally, and of course the player base will explode against them. That's the problem when people are on the edge. It can either work in your favor or it can blow up in your face, and I've seen it blow up in plenty of people's faces. And reality is, a lot of people right now, sure, things have quieted down with the review bombing of Warhammer 3, but I think the next critical point is going to be the release of Tides of Torment. If Tides of Torment is released and it is in a good state, as in it's better than Thrones of Decay, then they will sell hundreds of thousands of copies and start to really regain that community trust. Right now things have quieted, but that's not regaining trust, that just means it's quiet. But they need to do more. They need to avoid another year like this, because a lot of people have been burned out. A lot of people have started to become apathetic. I can say this as a content creator, what I'm seeing, what other creators are seeing. People are not engaged in Total War as they were a couple of years ago. There is a limit to how much you can screw up. And there's a limit to how much Sega is willing to tolerate from Creative Assembly. So that's the problem for CA at the moment. It's not that they've just pissed out their consumer base or their core fans. They've also lost the trust of Sega in a fairly substantial way after 2023. So they don't really have the safety nets that they had before. That's why it's so significant what is happening right now and why you're actually seeing a different response from Creative Assembly at the moment than you may have seen in the past. People argue, oh, there's plenty of people are still going to buy the next Total War game. Yes, 500,000 people, let's assume so, along with whatever new players, tourists, etc. It's still decent numbers, but what about the rest? Well, they could buy the game and then leave a negative review, or they could just not buy the game and say it's not worth it to their friends, to other people. Word of mouth is so very important. And imagine a situation where a next Total War game comes out and it doesn't have good reviews, good player reviews on Steam. That is not going to go down so well. In fact, we've seen it already with Omens of Destruction. Omens of Destruction was not a bad DLC, but it didn't excite people in the same way Thrones of Decay did. As in, if you look at the individual packages and the review scores of them, they're mixed, suffice to say. Gorebad is the worst. Maneater is the best out of the bunch in terms of review score, but Maneater also has the fewest reviews, so that just shows fewer people engaged with that DLC to begin with. That is not a great outcome. But from a practical standpoint, what do I think Creative Assembly needs to do? Yes, keep releasing hotfixes. Yes, do a great job with Tides of Torment, but once Tides of Torment comes out, we need to see a bigger effort from Creative Assembly with Warhammer 3 before the next Total War game comes out. From my view, that would mean various patches to address things like sieges, auto-resolve, if auto-resolve isn't already something they're looking to address with 7.0, and hopefully it is. The mid-game, the late-game, various problems, right? Various problems with races, various problems with characters, various problems with campaign dynamics. There's a whole discussion on the specifics, but there needs to be a genuine effort where we can see Creative Assembly actually trying. Not spending a year with undercooked patches and reworks and racial updates that they did this year. The only good thing that they've done this entire year, I should add, is actually the Kislev rework. And even with the Kislev rework, there's still things that they should do with that, and there's also things that they need to improve with the Omens of Destruction characters. Gorbad or Skull Taker's starting position, Gorbad's mechanics, those kind of things. Or how you interact with Maneater when you're not playing him. Various things. That's just Omens of Destruction. That's not even touching on the mountains of issues with plenty of existing characters and races that exist in the game. there's a lot that they can do. And I think that it doesn't necessarily matter if they fix everything. What people need to feel is that they care to at least try. And then in terms of content, I would say that releasing Neferata, Nagash, and Tanquil before the next Total War game comes out is also going to be critical. So what I'm basically arguing is that they should do an Neferata DLC, whether or not it's part of a larger DLC or just a standalone Lord pack, with perhaps the Red Duke as a free character, is a discussion in its own right. But then they should do the End Times. Not just the DLC, but an expansion. So when I say End Times, I'm literally referring to Nagash, Tanquil, Valten. Those are the things that matter, I would say. Like, people care about Nagash. They care about Tanquil. Not so much about Valten. That's a different discussion. But the End Times should not just be a single DLC, which is like, oh, here's several characters that we're adding on a map that's already struggling with the weight of characters. It should be different. There should be a map update, there should be a mid-game, there should be a late game, there should be a story focus, various choices, events. Hell, maybe even a specific map for End Times. Like, you can have Nagash and Tanquil on the Immortal Empires map, but there should also be a specific map for those kind of events. Because if we look at what Tanquil and Nagash did in the End Times, they were fairly significant events. Like Nagash's entire storyline over there, the things he was involved in, the civil war of the elves, absolutely very crucial. Then Tanquil, who basically became the racial leader of the Skaven. But those, again, are specifics, but they need to do something big for Total War Warhammer 3. And they need to fix various things, do that effort before the next Total War game comes out. And once it comes out, what they decide to do with Warhammer 3, that's a different discussion. We could talk about, Monkey King. We could talk about Dogs of War. We can talk about various Legendary Lords. But I would say it's very critical to get the big characters out of the picture, or do them before the next Total War game, and then focus on other things, if they want to. That would go a long way from my perspective in regaining some of the trust that they've lost with their player base. But of course, it depends on which Total War game is coming out as well. Because if, say for instance, they do Medieval 3 before 40k, just some examples, like those are the games we've heard about. Might not be those games, but we'll find out. But if they do Medieval 3 before Fantasy game, that's a different discussion. They could take it more slowly and, not do Nagash as quickly as possible. But DLCs need to also come faster. Characters need to come faster. Patches need to come faster. There needs more resources need to be allocated for Warhammer 3. This is no longer a discussion from my perspective on what's the profit margins for DLCs of Warhammer 3. It's more of a question, are you going to invest in Warhammer 3 to achieve success with the next Total War game, or are you not going to do so? Because if you do so, Creative Assembly will help themselves out for the next game. If they don't do so, they're taking a hell of a gamble from my perspective. And maybe I'm just talking here as a content creator, but sometimes gambles pay off, but other times they can also blow up in your face. And it's just the question of, can we reduce the risk that we have? And investing right now in Warhammer 3 is just essentially about that. It's about reducing the risk that the next Total War games will fail, because you will end up releasing those games with a bigger fan base of people that will buy them. Of course, it depends on those games. It depends on the pricing. We don't want another Pharaoh where it's like, oh, here's the ultra super expensive deluxe edition that has character skins. Don't do that, CA. That's one of the reasons Pharaoh failed, believe it or not. It's like the pricing, the marketing, the skins. People were not happy about those kind of things when you try to do so. So don't do a repeat of that. Would be very welcome as well. That's all I had to say. Christine signing out.